Hello, I'm Sharif Abdullah, and I'm delivering today one of the last videos I'm going to do on the wave, and that's because I believe the wave has hit. Um, First of all, a number of you have contacted me regarding timing. Um, they initially said back in January that the wave was going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. And at the end of June, June 30th for some folks, I said, oh, 6 months has gone by and we haven't seen anything. So um, I don't think that what was given to me back in January was a precise date. Um, 3 to 6 months is a pretty loose period of time. If the divine had wanted to be precise, the message I would have gotten would have said June 28th at 4:39 p.m. Saying 3 to 6 months means sometime around this time. Um, I started looking for evidence of the wave sometime in February, and I was going to continue to look until the end of July. And I don't think I need to look that long. Secondly, before I get to what this is, um, I a number of you contacted me when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and said, "Well, this is a ground-shaking event, and it's the leading edge of the wave." And I disagreed with that assessment. First of all, what happens to a group of people in the United States is not the same thing as having a global event. For many people in the rest of the world, and including some people here in the United States, that decision was not particularly earth-shaking. Um, for a number of women in the rest of the world, their rights to an abortion is guaranteed. And for a number of women in the rest of the world, they've never even heard of abortion. The idea of it would be even um, foreign to them. And so no, the overturning of Roe versus Wade was not the beginning of the wave. And also, the situation in terms of Roe v. Wade is not the first bad decision that the Supreme Court has ever made. In fact, it's really, really rare to find good decisions coming from the Supreme Court. It's only when your ox gets gored, that you start thinking that, oh, this is really terrible. You start thinking of the decisions that the Supreme Court made in terms of race, in terms of class, in terms of lots of other kinds of decisions. And you see that the U.S. Supreme Court has been making bad decisions for the past few hundred years. So yet another one coming from the Supreme Court is not particularly earth-shaking. So without further stretching this, let me tell you what I am seeing, confirmed by my guidance, as to what is happening with regard to the wave. That the first edge of this wave are the events that are happening right now in Sri Lanka. The complete meltdown of its economic system, coupled with the ongoing meltdown of its political system. As you know, I've been traveling the world for a number of years, a number of decades, 30 years or so. And I've been looking at various societies that have been in various stages of meltdown. I was in Cuba when their economic system, which was tied to Russia, melted down. I was in Russia when their economic system melted down, and food was scarce, and everything was scarce. Um, I was in Argentina when their financial system collapsed, And in each one of these situations, I got to witness firsthand dire, dire consequences to people on the ground, people who were relying on the continuation of the economic system for their very existence. So the meltdown in Sri Lanka shouldn't have been much different from that. But all of my alarm bells started going off when I started seeing what was happening. Coupled with the situation with the political consequences, and if you're not following the news, on this one you need to follow the news. The overturn of the president and the prime minister, the sacking of the prime minister's residence, the taking over the presidential mansion, uh, literally hundreds of thousands of people activated and motivated and getting rid of their political structure. And this is really big news. Now, remember, they did, was it 2 decades ago, Arab Spring happened and folks were overturning their political structures. And those political structures came right back to life. And new faces, but doing the same old thing. This process in terms of Sri Lanka, the reason that it is significant, the reason I think it's significant for all of us to be paying attention to, is that there are somewhere like 100 other countries in a similar state or close to this level of default. So if Sri Lanka by itself isn't that significant, and I say that with great apologies to all of my Sri Lankan friends and coworkers, etc. But 20 million people on a relatively small island isn't that globally significant. But if it's the leading edge of literally a wave of bankruptcies, a wave of financial collapse, a wave of organized discontent, organized anger. And I have to point out that the anger in Sri Lanka has been largely nonviolent. People haven't been trying to, burn the president or shoot the prime minister or anything like that. They are thinking out what's the next step? How do we keep from snapping back to the old system with new faces? That's significant, and that could be significant to help other countries go through their process of how do we change. We all know what's been happening with regard to our economic system, our global economic system. We know that the rich are getting obscenely rich and are getting even richer. In fact, for some of them say, we can't turn this machine off because we can't keep getting richer and richer. The poor get poorer and poorer. And the scenes from Sri Lanka have been very dire. People who just don't have enough food to eat. People who, the entire country running out of cooking oil, running out of fuel for their vehicles. My Sri Lankan friends sending me pictures of the major roads in the town, in the entire country, devoid of traffic. The only traffic are people walking or riding their bicycles. What I'm saying to us is that can happen here, can happen to us. If it does, we should be preparing for what this is, what's about to happen, and helping all of our friends around the world, all of our family members in all of the other countries in the world cope to the transition to a new economic system as the other one is dying right in front of our faces. Cope with the transition to a new political system as the other one is dying right in front of our faces. And having that system, those systems, based on a whole new set of values. Before we go any further in terms of the Sri Lanka catalyst that can lead to the global crisis, I want to review what I said about the wave 6 months ago. That the wave would, and I'm saying doing this so that you can check me, okay? This did I undersell, oversell? Am I talking about something completely different, etc.? So I said back in January that within the next 3 to 6 months, and we're in that bubble right now, humanity would experience the first aspects of a profound global consciousness shift and manifestation. That this would be would be something that would test our fundamental values and then even test our ideas of what reality means. It would be inexplicable, surprising, impossible, and over-the-top events and happening. We weren't supposed to know about it in advance. We're supposed to be adaptable, flexible, and we get an opportunity to actually operate from our highest values. Are we going to operate from our love, our compassion, and our community? Or are we going to act the way that breakers have always acted? And that's those people over there. Screw them. I'm busy over here. And what I'm busy with is making more money. How many of us will act from our greed, no matter what the cost is to others? How many of us, seeing the wave coming, will react out of fear? Will try to control the wave? Will try to channel it into understandable areas, which is what the the remnants of the Sri Lankan government is trying to do right now. I said 6 months ago is that the wave is how we will begin to turn into a butterfly. It's not how we want to do it. It's how we will do it, whether we want to or not. I've been for the last decade or so using the analogy of birth. Those of us who have been engaged in the process of birth, not necessarily as a subject, but as looking at someone else's birth, knows that it is a painful process. It is a disruptive process. There's a lot of yelling and screaming and groaning, moaning and groaning and gunky stuff coming out, etc. And after you go through all that mess, you get a baby. Welcome to the mess. And the mess can get messier. I said 6 months ago that the wave is going to have both positive and negative aspects. The wave itself is neither positive nor negative. The death of an economic system that has to die. We know this thing has to die. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. It is completely unsustainable. And then when it looks like it's dying, we go, oh my God, why is it dying? And what can we do to stop it from dying? It's like, no, you don't stop it from dying. You welcome the birth. The wave is just an event. It's your response. It's the people in Sri Lanka, their response. It's the response of governments around the world that will turn it positive or negative. I looked at 10 different scenarios of how, first I looked at 3 ways of approaching it. You approach it with mindfulness, you approach it with mindlessness, and you approach it with control. And we're seeing a little bit of that happening elements of that happening in the Sri Lanka um, context. But I said that I identified 10 possible waves. These are the 10 that I said. Alien contact, limited nuclear war, and I was particularly looking at the Ukraine, but I'm always looking at the 3 nuclear powers that rattled their sabers at each other: India, Pakistan, and China. I said, half of the human beings spontaneously disappear, not a rapture or no pattern, but they're gone. And that one still kind of bothers me. I'm troubled by, here in the United States, and looks like everywhere else in the world, they don't have a workforce. Every sector of society is saying we don't have enough workers. I don't know how that's possible. That's grounds for another video. Um, I said that the 5 latent powers spontaneously manifest, and I do. Um, I did a video on the 5 latent powers, and you should look in the wave uh, folder for the 5 latent powers video. Um, this would include spontaneous object moving, spontaneous telepathy and knowing, visions of the future or the past, and other elements of the 5 latent powers. Magnetic pole shift, and I said something about that, I think, in the last few of the wave videos. Solar flares or coronal mass ejections as ways of seriously damaging the electromagnetic infrastructure of our human society. I said that something could cause electricity to be negated, and if that happened, everything from your smartphone to the generator that generates all your electricity will be gone. And the last thing I said on the list, that money disappears or is redistributed. Guess what we saw in Sri Lanka? All of a sudden, money's gone. All of a sudden, all of the things that rely on money, which is just about everything in the society, is gone. It's not there anymore. What do you do when you rely on a particular medicine and the medicine isn't there? What do you do when you rely on a particular medicine and you need transportation to get you to the place that has the medicine and there is no transportation? What do you do when you're even growing your own vegetables, but you don't have the kerosene to cook the vegetables with? All of this is very interesting when it happens to somebody else. It's dire when it's happening to you. You can treat this challenge as something that is happening to others, or you can treat it as something that is happening to all of us in this human family, and have all of us in the human family come together and act together for the good of all. Do something that's never been done before. That is our challenge. And what follows this is, I want to give us some thought to what's actually happening in Sri Lanka, what the next moves are, how important those next moves are, and some things that Commonway is may be doing with regard to this process. I want to take some time to talk about uh, what happens next in Sri Lanka, to the extent that I can see it, and to talk about the what's happening next in your life, to the extent that I can see that, and actually talk about what's happening next in my life. I'm not sure I see any of that. Um, as I said in the earlier video, we're going to react to this crisis, both the Sri Lanka portion of it, and as it gets bigger and bigger in the world, to the other aspects of it. We're going to act with either mindfulness, mindlessness, or control. Um, in the mindful model, we need to become, both as individuals and as a group, flexible, adaptable, fear free. We need to be unfreakable by whatever happens next. We need to react to this with community instead of individuality. We need to bond together. We need to be looking to and calling on the transcendent, regardless of your religious conviction, regardless of whether you have any religious conviction at all. You should be looking to the elements of our being that don't lie in our five senses. We need to be developing out of this a collective consciousness. Our consciousness needs to move away from our consciousness of our individuality and toward the consciousness of our group. We need to move beyond the three I's: individualism, ideologies, and institutions. We can't rely on our individualism anymore. We can't rely on the ideologies of the past. We can't rely on the institutions which are failing as we're going right now. We must become more compassionate. We must become more authentic, true to who we are. We need to become more inclusive and have inclusivity as a primary value. We need to become more spiritual. And again, that is not meaning more religious. And the most important element is that we need to put life first. Not just my own life, not just human life, but the life on the planet itself. This is how we begin undoing all of the damage, not just we've got a problem with our economic system, or we have a problem with our political system, or, as we find out in Sri Lanka, we have both. There's also the mindless model. We're turn the volume up on the television set, use some more drugs, drink some more alcohol, and everything will be better. I'm not spending any time on that because folks that are watching this video don't do any of that stuff. And then there's the control model. Right now, as the demonstrators are still sitting in the president's palace, there are others who are trying to invent a new story that will keep them in control. There are others who are trying to assign blame in such a way that will keep them in control or put them in control. Right now, and we can see it in our news media, the media is going to spin this thing. They're going to get the official, professor from Harvard or Oxford, and they're going to pontificate on how this happened and why the Rajapaksas made the wrong decisions, etc. And they're going to try to spin this thing so that there is not a transformation, there's a continuation of the existing power. And there will be those who are trying to create benefits for going along with the story and punishments for not going along with the story. And I found it remarkable as of the last time I checked, which was just an hour or so ago. The Sri Lankan military has stayed out of this situation as well they should. Um, so we know what failure looks like when we start seeing the same old faces being drug out of the closets that they've been in, saying we're in charge, and seeing the hundreds of thousands of demonstrators going along with that. We know that they missed their point, that missed that catalytic point, and that they'll spend some time going back to a system that looks somewhat normal. There'll be some more money in the system. There'll be some more food in the system. There'll be some more fuel in the system. And then it'll collapse worse, and then catastrophically, it'll be a mess. Um, so we know that that these are the ways that people will respond to the failings of that system. I continually have been urging you, and I urge all of us now, stop paying attention to the pain. Stop paying attention to the yucky stuff that's going along. Focus on the baby. Focus on what we as human beings are birthing right now on the other side of the planet. That what we're birthing is a new economic system, a new political system, an economic system and a political system that doesn't need the International Monetary Fund, that doesn't need the World Bank, in fact would be seen as going backwards by borrowing more money. It's a failed strategy. It's failing all over the place. It's failing right here in the United States. We have enough money to paper over the failure. But what we have to start doing is recognizing, oh, we need a new system. Let's pay attention to what's happening on that little tiny island over in Sri Lanka, and see if that provides us with ideas on how to create and how to recreate an economic system. Our political system is collapsing right around us. We know it, we can feel it in our bones, and we don't know what to do about it. What we have been trained to do is support one side or the other. That approach will simply not work. It may make you feel comfortable that I'm fighting for this little segment over here, or I'm fighting for that little segment over there. But it's time for us to get beyond segments. It's time for us to get beyond little ideologies. It's time for us to begin to see the whole and to become part of the whole, to become part of something that's larger than me or my group or my nation. Some years ago, I did a series of workshops and lectures in a downtown Portland bookstore. And the title was Learning to Think and Act Like a Planet. Now, that's what we should be doing. I should be asking the question, not what's good for my corporation, not what's good for my political nation. We should be asking the question, what is good for all living beings on this planet? We should not be measuring our good in money. That's a failed strategy. It's failing right in front of our faces. What we should be doing is measuring our good by what lies in our hearts. I'm welcoming that. I invite you to welcome the same. More coming. Thank you.